In everyday life, we often encounter arguments and moments of aggressive conflict, only for a new situation to arise the very next moment when silence has a strange way of echoing louder than any argument. It hangs in the air like a closed door you aren't sure you're allowed to knock on, a stillness that feels intentional even when it isn't. When a woman goes quiet, the world around her doesn't change, but the space between you does. It becomes tight, charged, almost electric, as if the air itself is holding its breath. On the surface, her silence looks calm, composed, even indifferent. But beneath that calm often sits something far more human, overwhelm that she can't explain without making things heavier, fear that speaking will only escalate what she's trying to contain, or exhaustion that words cannot relieve. Picture a room where nothing is out of place, yet everything feels unsettled. Two people sitting only a few feet apart, yet their thoughts drifting miles away from each other. Her stillness becomes a puzzle you can't solve, a message without letters, a presence that feels like absence, and it leaves you wondering, is she pulling away from you, or simply trying to hold herself together? This moment, quiet as it seems, is where the real story begins. Most people jump to conclusions when a woman goes quiet. The mind fills the silence with its own fears. She must be angry, she must be punishing, she must be losing interest. That instinctive leap into self-blame or defensiveness is the first illusion this section explores. The emotional pull here is simple but powerful. The fear that silence means rejection. But that fear often has more to do with our own insecurity than with her intention. Culturally, we've been taught that communication equals care. We hear phrases like, if she wanted you, she'd say something, or if she's quiet, she's done. These messages create a rigid expectation that love must always speak loudly, clearly, and immediately. When silence enters the room, people assume that something has broken. Yet this belief ignores how humans actually cope with overwhelm. For many women, especially those raised in high-conflict homes or relationships, quiet becomes a self-protective default, not a weapon. Think of common everyday moments. A text she doesn't answer for hours, a reply that feels shorter than usual, a sudden drop in warmth after a disagreement. These small signals can ignite panic in someone who fears abandonment or misreads distance as disinterest. The truth is often less dramatic. She may be processing, or cooling down, or trying not to say something she'll later regret. She may need space to regulate her emotions before speaking clearly. This makes one idea clear. Silence is not a verdict. It is not always punishment. It is not always retreat. More often, the story people tell themselves about her silence says more about their own wounds than it does about her intentions. The illusion lies in thinking her withdrawal is about you, when it might be about her trying not to shatter under the weight of her own feelings. Silence does not begin in adulthood. It begins in childhood, in moments when speaking felt unsafe, or when vulnerability was met with dismissal instead of comfort. This section turns inward, revealing that emotional withdrawal is rarely about coldness. It is about protection. The emotional purpose here is to shift the audience from judgment to empathy, showing that distance often hides a long history of learning that expression comes at a cost. Attachment theory offers a clear explanation. Children who grow up in environments where conflict erupts quickly, or where emotions are minimized, learn to down-regulate themselves by going quiet. Developmental psychology refers to this as adaptive survival behavior. The nervous system chooses silence not because it wants distance, but because it fears escalation. If a young girl learned that raising her voice triggered anger, or that expressing sadness made her a burden, she begins to equate emotional honesty with danger. The habit follows her into adulthood like a shadow. Picture the woman who grew up walking on eggshells, listening for tone shifts before entering a room. Or the one who learned to soothe herself quietly because nobody came when she cried. Maybe she watched affection disappear the moment she asked for something she needed. These early patterns teach a painful lesson. Staying silent preserves connection better than speaking up. In relationships, this shows up as withdrawal, hesitation, or emotional paralysis. When conflict arises, she doesn't go quiet because she doesn't care. She goes quiet because a lifetime of conditioning tells her that saying the wrong thing might break everything. Silence becomes her shield against rupture, even if it creates the very distance she fears. The tone is intimate and analytical, emphasizing that emotional retreat is not indifference. It is fear. It is overstimulation. It is the nervous system bracing for impact. The deeper truth is simple, yet difficult. Her distance is not meant to push someone away. It is her attempt to keep the relationship from becoming another battlefield she is unequipped to survive. In the modern world, silence has more room to hide. This section shows how emotional withdrawal adapts to a culture where communication never stops, and where the pressure to be constantly available magnifies the instinct to retreat. The emotional tension builds around the mismatch between digital speed and human emotional bandwidth. People expect instant replies, tidy expressions, and continuous warmth, yet the nervous system still shuts down when overwhelmed. What once looked like a quiet pause in a physical room now looks like seen at 9:12 p.m. with no follow-up. Social media creates a strange stage for silence. The narration explores how curated emotional availability, smiling posts, calm captions, perfectly timed stories, can mask internal exhaustion. Someone can be active online, yet entirely withdrawn from the person who matters most. Passive scrolling replaces real engagement because it requires no vulnerability. The platform becomes a place to exist without being confronted. It is a modern version of turning off the light, but leaving the door open a crack. Examples ground the analysis: the unanswered message that suddenly feels like a statement, the shift from long conversations to brief emojis, or the way someone disappears for days after an emotionally heavy exchange. Ghosting becomes a common escape. Because the digital world offers invisible exits, you can vanish without hearing your name spoken with disappointment. Even partial withdrawal, short replies, delayed responses, muted notifications, becomes a quiet language of overwhelm that few know how to read. Dating culture amplifies the confusion. Advice columns frame silence as strategy. Influencer rhetoric praises coldness as high value. Emotional retreat becomes performative, rewarded even, because unavailability is misread as strength. Yet beneath it, the psychology is unchanged. It is still fear, still fatigue, still the nervous system shutting down to cope. The tone throughout observational, almost documentary-like, revealing how technology makes it easier to withdraw, while making that withdrawal feel sharper, more personal, and more confusing than ever. Modern life has given silence new shapes, but the meaning beneath it remains as old as the wounds that first taught someone to hold their tongue. Healing begins when silence is no longer treated as a mystery to decode or a threat to control, but as an honest signal of emotional capacity. The tension eases as both partners start seeing distance not as rejection, but as the nervous system's way of saying, "I need space to stay safe." The narration turns warmer, describing how couples can slowly replace fear-driven interpretations with curiosity and care. When one withdraws, the other learns to pause instead of pursue, to soften instead of demand. The focus shifts to practice, naming overwhelm before it turns into absence, taking intentional pauses to self-regulate, and re-entering dialogue when calm returns. A small cinematic image anchors the message: two people sitting quietly, not trying to fix the silence, simply breathing until the room feels safe again. This is where connection begins to repair itself, not through grand gestures, but through patience and embodied awareness. This closes with a grounded insight. Emotional safety is not built by constant communication, but by learning when to hold space and when to step closer. In that rhythm, between presence and pause, the silence finally becomes not a wall, but a bridge back to understanding. Her silence was never a void. It was language in another form, spoken through absence, through the soft retreat that says, "I'm not gone, I'm guarding what's left of me." The narration slows, inviting the viewer into that stillness, where noise no longer demands proof of care. What once felt like rejection now reveals itself as self-preservation, the quiet bravery of someone trying not to break. The emotional tone turns meditative, showing how love deepens when we stop filling silence with fear and start listening to what it carries beneath. The camera lingers on a still image, Two figures in the same room, no words, only breath and understanding. The air between them, once heavy with confusion, now feels sacred, tender. It ends with a soft truth. Connection isn't sustained by constant talking, but by learning to stay present, even when words disappear. When we stop fearing the silence, we begin to hear what the heart has been trying to say all along.